Assalamu alaikum, students. We are assembled here again to continue our lecture. We have so far we are dealing with khiljis. So far, we have seen that why khilji takeover in history is referred to as khilji revolution. Then after, we saw the ascendance of Jalaluddin Khilji and later Alaudin Khilji. And when we left the previous day, we had been studying about the conquests of Alauddin Khilji. हम किन के बारे में पढ़ रहे थे? हम conquests and annexation. I have been repeatedly saying you that the period of Khilji was expansionist phase of Delhi Sultanate. That's why he is he is seen as the offensive because his conquests were mainly aimed at Hindu rulers, though we may not be true as far as history is concerned, but whenever we see the Sikh of Rajasthan from Gujarat to Malwa to Deogir to Ranthambore, we see a lot of things, lot of his conquests covering Hindu rulers. That's why he is seen as an offender. But we also know him by various other reforms, which we although tried to mention that day, but we did not explain them. Today we will try to explain. But before I explain about the reforms of Alauddin Khilji, you know, when film Padmavat was released, the discussions, the discourses about Alauddin Khilji started in the intellectual circle of India, in various corners of the Indian society. It was often discussed, yes, he is an offender. He led an offensive because he campaigned offensively against Indian rulers who were primarily Hindus. But it was also remarkably discussed among the various circles of India that if there would not have been Alauddin Khilji, our country would have been ravished by the Mongols. He was the one who stopped them, who thwarted their in coming to India and saved the country, its precious syncretic culture, its composed culture, and the society at a large and economy itself. Take. So now let's start with Alauddin Khilji's policies. I will be giving you broad line of his policies because two types of questions can be asked. Remember one thing. Why we are studying each and every aspect? Because we don't want ourselves to feel incomplete even if we are taking a personality test. In preliminary and not in mains especially, but in preliminary, you can be asked a question about Khiljis, either a true aspect of that policy or the true feature of that policy, or question can be asked in terms of significance of that policy. Why is it significant policy of the medieval times? So you will have to develop an insight to give a significance, and that developing a significance can come from the policy feature itself. That's why we'll be covering both the aspects. Remember, the questions from UPSC paper or in any case JKPSC paper. Now, apart from information based on facts, your understanding is being also checked. You need to be aware of the situation. You do not have to find yourself isolated when you come across that kind of question. Okay? So without wasting time, let's come to our discussion. We'll first go with economic policies. Whenever we'll study economic policies, we'll start studying in two broad categories. One would be market policies. Or market reforms, more appropriate. Market reforms. Other would be agrarian reforms. Keep hold of the things from here. Whenever we'll be discussing about market reform, जब हम market reforms की बात करेंगे, क्योंकि मैंने आपको ये discussion, ये question आपको बोला था आप इसकी प्री रीडिंग करके आइए, तो आपने क्या पढ़ा मार्केट रिफॉर्म्स में? उस वक्त आपने क्या पढ़ा? What Alaudin did, we'll study in various points. One was division of markets. Other aspect would be fixation. Third aspect would be regulation and control. When you study like this in various headings, you are naturally preparing your answer for your mains. This will help you to develop an answer writing skill. ठीक? And your answer for your evaluator becomes easy to be evaluated. ठीक है? Regulation and control. If we further divide it, we can also write it transportation or urban. More importantly, we can write urban-rural integration. Now, what do you see here? We see here that we are writing like a replica UPSC answer. We will have the same set of information which you had studied, but we are going to present in a different way. The way in which you will never forget the things. ठीक? When we study about market reforms, we'll be discussing about a historian. What's the name of the historian which says us about these market reforms? This is conveyed to us by a historian named Barani. कौन बोलता है हमें? Barani एक historian जो हमें market reforms के बारे में बोलता है. Means Barani was the contemporary of Alaudin khilji. एक ऐसा question जो directly books में नहीं है मगर understood है, तो वो तो उसी aspect में खिलजी के दौर का इंफॉर्मेशन दे सकता है जब वो उसका कंटेम्प्रेरी हो. ठीक? हाँ, तो कभार आपको ऐसे सवाल यूपीएससी में पूछे जाते हैं कि कंटेम्प्रेरी हिस्टोरियंस बताए कौन इस रूलर का कंटेम्प्रेरी कौन था, उस रूलर का कंटेम्प्रेरी कौन था. ठीक? नाउ व्हेन वी से फर्स्ट थिंग डिवीजन ऑफ मार्केट्स, हाउ मेनी मार्केट्स? 3 markets. Sometimes is being mentioned 4, but Barani says there were 3 markets. He established 3 markets. ठीक? Very nice. First market was about food grains. Second,
slaves and horses.
that's third. Second, clothes, expensive items like perfumes. herd, horses and slaves. Now, what we'll write about when we come to second heading? What we'll study here? Fixation of price. What do I mean by fixation of price? He tried to fix a price of each and every commodity. उसको बहुत ही कम प्राइस पे वो कोशिश कर रहा था रखने. Fixed price. Low price of each and every commodity. That was, if he had not fixed the price of each and every commodity, the history would have remembered this market reforms. But he tried to control each and every aspect, which did not go well with times. Okay? Then, what did he do for regulation and control? He established Department of आपने नहीं पढ़ा? हाँ? दीवानी रियासत. Established दीवानी रियासत. Very important it is. Especially you might have been seeing regarding this Alaudin questions, if picked from Delhi Sultanate, are often picked from era of Alaudin Khilji or Muhammad bin Tughlaq. You have to remember each and every aspect about their rule. Established Diwani Riyasat, which was headed by Shahnai Mandi. Shahnai Mandi. This Diwani Riyasat was headed by Shahnai Mandi, who used to overlook these markets. ठीक? Mandi means market, who is overlook. And उस और कंट्रोल करने के लिए इसके बावजूद he appointed intelligence officers known as barids. जिस तरीके से मैं आपको ये पढ़ा रहा हूँ, आप कभी ये नहीं भूलेंगे. मगर आपको ऐसी सीक्वेंस डेवलप करनी होती है. अदरवाइज फिर चीज़ें देखो, आप अगर इंजीनियरिंग स्टूडेंट्स होंगे, एक होती है रैंडम एक्सेस मेमोरी, एक होती है सीक्वेंशियल मेमोरी. आसान किस में है? रैंडम एक्सेस मेमोरी की सीक्वेंशियल. क्यों? सीक्वेंस में जब चीज़ें आते हैं तो एक के बाद दूसरी. जब रैंडम एक्सेस करती है एक्सेस, उसको कहीं से भी कुछ भी उठाना पड़ता है. ज़रूरी है कि वो कभी कभार क्रैश भी कर सकती है. ज़रूरी नहीं है कि वो आपको सही रिजल्ट, अगर प्रोसेसर अच्छा नहीं होगा, मीन्स रैंडम एक्सेस मेमोरी भी आपकी तभी काम आएगी जब प्रोसेसर अच्छा होगा. अगर आपका ब्रेन अच्छा होगा तो आपकी रैंडम एक्सेस मेमोरी ठीक होगी. अगर ब्रेन अच्छा नहीं होगा, क्योंकि हमारा ब्रेन ज़्यादातर रोम का काम करेगा. जब चीज़ें हम पढ़ते हैं वो किस में जाती है? रोम में. रोम सीक्वेंशियल होती है कि रैंडम होती है? सीक्वेंशियल. तो चीज़ें फिर सीक्वेंस में डाउन आ जाती है. ठीक है? तो इसलिए आपको सीक्वेंशियली उन चीज़ों को याद रखना पड़ता है. फिर जाके जब आप रिवाइज करते हैं तो ये रैम में चली जाती है. फिर आप कहीं से भी कैशे से उठा सकते हो. ठीक? जब आप ज़्यादा रिवाइज करो तो कैशे में ही मेमोरी होती है, तो आप रिफ्रेशिंग रेट बहुत फास्ट होती है. अभी पहले ये कहाँ जाएगी? रोम में. तो रोम में आप स्टोर करो. इंटेलिजेंस ऑफिसर्स, और उन इंटेलिजेंस ऑफिसर को क्या कहा जाता था? बारिद. याद रखिए. ठीक है? और सीक्रेट स्पाइज इसने अपॉइंट किए थे, और उनको दिल्ली सल्तनत के टाइम उनको क्या जो था? मुनहियन. याद रखेंगे. ये टर्मिनोलॉजी वाले क्वेश्चन कभी कभार आते हैं, तो मेहरबानी कर टर्मिनोलॉजी पे ध्यान दें. Munhiyan. 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 ये आपने कॉपी किया, समझ आया? Now, I added one more point which I added of my own. That is rural-urban integration. It's often, we are being often said that these markets were established near Delhi. But where was crop produced? Mainly, in the countryside, in the rural areas, and the crop or the produce was brought from rural India to the city of Delhi through caravans, through banjars. And these banjar, इन बंजरों को भी पहले क्या करना पड़ता था? क्या करना पड़ता था? इनको भी, उसको क्या बोलते हैं? मतलब इनको भी लाइसेंस, एक तरह से लाइसेंस होनी चाहिए. इनको भी क्या बोलते हैं उसको? हाँ, they were to get registered before they get. और ये सारी मार्केट रिफॉर्म्स क्यों हो रही है? आपको क्या लगता है मार्केट रिफॉर्म्स क्यों हो रही है? दो इंपॉर्टेंट रीजन. अगर आपको कोई पूछेगा ये मार्केट रिफॉर्म्स क्यों की थी अलाउद्दीन खिलजी ने, आप याद रखेंगे, एक जो मेडिवल इंडिया के सुल्तान या किंग्स हुआ करते थे, they used to keep their countrymen very much satisfied. और वो कब रहेंगे satisfied? Whether in which circumstances? When they would have inflated goods and services or goods with lower price. Inflation होनी चाहिए सिस्टम में कि डिफ्लेशन होनी चाहिए.
That was not good for countryside, man. Prices were low.
I'm saying people around Sultan. You know, I'll come when I say the negative aspects of this situation. Then I will say how did it affect peasants. I'm not saying that the primary reason, two primary reason. I have not discussed second yet. So you can rest for a while. The primary reason were two. One was they often took pride in keeping their countrymen satisfied. And by lowering the price of commodities, they wanted to satisfy their countrymen. One. Second, most, and in fact, I believe more important than the first one, is to raise and efficiently administer his army to control the Mongol menace that was very much closer through the northwestern frontier. तो obviously उसके लिए आर्मी चाहिए. जब उसके लिए आर्मी चाहिए तो आर्मी को खाना चाहिए. तो जब खाना चाहिए तो जब उसको बहुत लार्ज नंबर में आर्मी चाहिए तो उनके लिए खाना, अगर वो महंगा प्रोड्यूस लेगा तो वो उनके लिए फिर उसको सैलरी भी उतनी होनी चाहिए. जब सैलरी उससे कम थी तो खाने की कीमत कम होनी चाहिए ना, तो एक उसके लिए. और हॉर्सेस इम्पोर्टेंट, द कैवलरी वाज बेस्ट ड्यूरिंग द टाइम्स ऑफ अलाउद्दीन खिलजी. तो वो बेस्ट टाइप्स ऑफ हॉर्सेस, उनकी प्राइसेस भी उसको रेगुलेट करने थे ताकि वो हॉर्सेस वो वहाँ से. तो आपने देखा होगा दाग एंड चेहरा सिस्टम, ठीक है, वहाँ बाद में पढ़ेंगे. तो फिलहाल आया समझ क्यों हो गया. नाउ these policies were having both positive as well as negative impact. These policies were having both positive and negative effects. If you can use your brain, you can say what can be the positive impact or negative impact.
Positive impact could be that he needed to pay his army less salaries because they would be happy that they could control.
Positive impact that he tried to keep his countrymen satisfied. He tried to raise an efficient and well administered, without any rebellion, non-rebellious army to control the Mongol menace. Third, it was a type of social justice. Can we say it? Yes, it was a type of social justice because he was trying to keep prices as low as he could. But a question mark. Why did these policies, if they were this good, why did they end up with the death of Alaudin Khilji? They should have continued. They should have continued. They should have up in because it's very interesting topic. I don't want any kind of during the times of Alaudin Khilji, since agricultural we don't hear of any famine. These when we say discuss about the positive impacts of these policies, we don't hear any kind of famine. We have no record of famine during the times of Alaudin Khilji, as far as historical sources are concerned. And even if, since various types of regulatory and control measures were used to law and order prevailed very systematically in those areas. Take, well, these can be some of these are silver sides of his policy or positive sides of his policy. But contrary, I again repeat this sentence, if these policies were so good, if ये policies इतनी अच्छी थी, why didn't they continue? Because good policies have no sunset clause. Huh?
Merchants used to purchase items at lower prices and sell them.
See what happened. He did a blunder. He should have controlled or fixed the price of only those commodities which were used by army. But he tried to fix the price of each and every commodity. When you try to fix each and every commodity, you are going towards a centralization, a very strong centralization, which is not good as far as governance is concerned. Take second thing, merchants made wrong use of these policies. Since goods had to be procured from peasants, they were given very low price. So they, in the long run, decided to leave the art of or leave the field of cultivation. ठीक? And third thing, since regulatory measures and control measures were very harsh, this policy of control and this became very much oppressive. For GS students, these can be enough points to deal with, but if somebody is from the history optional, he can contact me for further options. But to develop an insight from these points only, we develop an insight. If a UPSC asks significance and limitation of that policy, so that we can use these points to define our significance and limitations. One, oppression of the peasants, oppression of those Banjaras, merchants who used to deal with it. Third was he tried to control each and every price of each and every commodity. That was not good because there's access to centralization. Access to centralization is not good out of any statecraft. ठीक? So rest you can think of yourself using these points. This is about market forms. Is it clear? You should remember it more and more. And these are one of the significant features of Alaudin policies. I'm again telling you why I'm going in length and breadth of this topic. I don't want any of you to feel incomplete after studying. I don't want you to be among those students who say, how can we revise? We don't want to study ancient and medieval. That's not how you can be a good student or a good, because If you do not know the history of your own country, then how can you learn from history? Then how can you be a good compatriot, partner in a good governance? You cannot, because you will not have learned through history. It's important to learn history and culture at least of your own country. ठीक? यह समझ आया अच्छे से? मुझे लगता है मोर देन अच्छे से इस लेवल पे आपको इतना ठीक है जी इस लेवल. Now, we will study about agrarian reform. Huh? Again, Barani says us about agrarian reforms that were introduced. You know, agrarian reforms will become important amongst two rulers. One will be Alaudin Khilji and one will be Muhammad bin Tughlaq. ठीक है? इन दोनों के एग्रेरियन रिफॉर्म्स हमारे लिए इम्पोर्टेंट है. बट फिलहाल आज किसका हम डील करेंगे? खिलजीज के एग्रेरियन. What do you know about his agrarian reforms? Give me some 2 points. What? That was already being used. We have studied at Aragata, even in MCQs. That was already being used for irrigation. What about his agrarian? How do you think he reformed agriculture or land reform or land revenue system? How did he reform? No, you are telling very much opposite to what he did. Ikta is not a system that is concerned with agrarian reforms. Rather, Ikta is an administrative structure. That's administrative reform. One thing I would tell you, then you will be able to link all those points to it, and they will help you to guide how, even if you don't remember properly, but you remember this sentence. ये सेंटेंस के बाद आप देखेंगे how reforms could have unfolded. He wanted his main agrarian reforms aimed at one thing. He wanted to limit role of intermediaries. Like Muqaddams and Quds. Like Muqaddams. इस पॉइंट को आप जब आप याद रखेंगे, ये आपका गाइडिंग, ये आपकी गाइडिंग लाइट बनेगी. क्या बनेगी? This will serve as a lighthouse to understand what agrarian reforms of Alauddin Khilji.
Peasants could directly deal with the state.
What?
Peasants could directly deal with the state.
No, let's see how he do. How will he do? But you will have to keep this thing in mind, that if he wanted to limit the role of intermediaries, means he wanted to get them at par with actual peasantry that was present on the ground. He did not want to give them any kind of privilege. He wanted to take them at par with like any ordinary peasants. ठीक? Now, let's study about his agrarian reforms. We discuss it under various headings. 1. Expansion of Khalisa lands. Especially in Doab region. There's Yamuna, Doab, that was stretched from Dipalpur to now Allahabad, stretching from Multan, Dipalpur to Allahabad, huh? In UP. ठीक? Now, what do we mean by the Khalsa land?
The king collectors lands directly.
Remember this land. Khalsa,
Ikta and Inam.
Jagirs or Inam or milk. ठीक? Or Inams or milk, whatever it is. ठीक? The king would have direct control over these lands where he would extract revenue without any middleman in between, or which was directly in the control of a king. These lands were known as Khalsa lands. When his main reforms were, whatever reforms he carried out, they were directed towards the security of the state. Because land revenue, हमें जब किंग के पास अच्छे से अच्छी ट्रेजरी होगी, अच्छे revenues होंगे, then only he could he could do other things. समझ आया? तो खालसा लैंड्स को जब इसने एक्सपेंड किया, तो खालसा लैंड्स में इसने क्या बोला कि यहाँ से आप इसने सिस्टम ऑफ मेजरमेंट स्टार्ट किया. उसको क्या बोलते थे? पहले आया एक्सपेंशन ऑफ खालसा लैंड्स. तो एक्सपेंशन ऑफ खालसा लैंड्स यहाँ से क्या कर सकता था? डायरेक्ट एक्सट्रैक्ट कर सकता था, हाँ? और दोज हु वर नॉट असाइन्ड तो उनको इक्ता एरियाज कहते थे. तो आपको पता है ना. नाउ फर्स्ट सुल्तान or first ruler or first sultan that started land revenue on the basis of measurement. ठीक? ये हो गया एक्सपेंशन एक, हाँ? दूसरा क्या था? Land revenue based on measurement of land revenue, which was half of the produce. याद रखना.
Estimated or actual?
Which is just now. Land revenue was half of produce. But what was significant in this thing? What was significant here? But this was first time that the measurement of land was taken into consideration. Means land revenue was based on measurement of land. ठीक है?
Right?
No, land revenue was half of produce and it was based on. और यहाँ से आपका सवाल उठ सकता है. First time, huh? He was the first who used this technique. That is, land was measured to extract revenue. And what was the unit of measurement? What was the unit of measurement? यहाँ से क्वेश्चन है. बिस्वा. And the yield per biswa was known as wafai biswa. आपका confusion खुद clear हो गया. Was it estimated or actual? It was a yield per biswa known as wafai biswa. Means yield जो हमें मिल रहा था ना per biswa, हमें जो ये मिल रहा था yield, उसको क्या कहते थे? वफाए बिस्वा. इतना याद है बिस्वा. तो बिस्वा तक आप याद रखेंगे. बिस्वा was unit of measurement. Alaudin khilji used बिस्वा as unit of measurement. ठीक है? Yes. हाँ, ये समझ आया? Also, Now, he had to extract revenue arrears from these areas, so he established Department of or Diwani Mustakraj. आपका खराज भी यहाँ हो गया. खराज मीन्स रेवेन्यू. आया समझ? तो उस इन रेवेन्यू एरियर्स, डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ रेवेन्यू एरियर्स, तो उसको क्या बोलते थे? डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ मीन्स ही एस्टैब्लिश्ड रेवेन्यू एरियर्स, जिसको क्या बोलते थे? दीवानी मुस्तखराज. और मुस्तखराज बिकेम द इम्पोर्टेंट रेवेन्यू ऑफिशियल ड्यूरिंग हिज टाइम. और चूंकि अब हम डिफरेंट एरिया, हाँ यहाँ एक पहला पॉइंट, अब यह हमारा चौथा पॉइंट बनेगा. अगर ये तीसरा पॉइंट हमारा बना, मगर ये देखिए हमने चौथे पॉइंट को पहले इसलिए डिस्कस किया क्योंकि जब हमें उनका इंटरमीडिएट का रोल खत्म कर रहा है, तो हमें इसी तरीके से इंटरमीडिएट का रोल के पहले किंग को अंडर अपना जो लैंड है अपने अंदर ज्यादा लाना है. ठीक. फिर burden should not pass to the peasant. So what did he do? He used directly the measurement technique. हाँ, तो वहां से जितना yield आएगा उसका हाफ मुझे दे दो. Although it was very high, it was very oppressive, it was high, this tax was very high, but this was the need of the time as far as security is concerned. Yeah, I समझ. Then he, to collect that revenue, he established Department of Revenue Arrears known as Diwani Mustakraj. Now, do you see anywhere intermediary role? Before this, the revenue was mainly collected by these intermediaries. They used to pass their burden on these peasants, but now directly from individual revenue was collected. Some state and the state and the people, इंटीग्रेशन अब हो गई. स्टेट सिटीजन इंटीग्रेशन यहाँ हमें देखने को मिल रही है. क्यों? अब डायरेक्टली इंटरेक्शन हो रही है स्टेट को किसके साथ? अपने कॉमन मैन के साथ. तो ये हिस्ट्री में समझना बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, हाउ थिंग्स चेंज. और हिज आया समझ? हाँ, देन यू नो दिस. He limited the role of intermediaries like Mukdams and Quds, but he resumed some non-dob areas में उसने कौन से resume किए? मिल्क इनाम वाले वो उसने तो आप देख लेना वो क्या थे, मिल्क इनाम क्या थे. ठीक है, किसने किए? अलाउद्दीन खिलजी ने. non-dob areas में उन्होंने क्या किया? हाँ, he resumed several land grants in non-doab area like मिल्क खुद या मिल्क इनाम ऐसे. ठीक है, तो आप देख लेना ये होगा लैंड रेवेन्यू. हाँ, और अब उसने क्या किया? और इसने जो मिल्क इनाम जो ना मुकदम वो खुद इससे पहले चराई मीन्स दिस grazing tax or house tax garai, they would use not to pay them. Now he told them to pay these taxes as well, garai or house tax or charai cultivation tax. आया समझ? grazing tax or house tax. ठीक. Now, let's see, like we have seen the impact. बिस्वा याद रखना, बिस्वा आपके इसके लिए इम्पोर्टेंट है. किसके लिए? आपके सवाल के लिए. तो देखो तीन चीजें हमें एरियाज में दिखी. सिकंदर सानी when it comes to annexations, when it comes to conquests. हाँ, बिस्वा when it comes to land reforms. ठीक है, and market reforms में आपको पता ही है. ठीक. Now, what can you say? What can be its देखो ये बहुत यहाँ से सवाल कैसे बनेगा? This was half of the produce, 50% of the tax. The tax rate was 50%. Means they had to give almost half of their produce to
State.
state. Very bad. Too much of a tax. Huh? Second thing, what can you see? Regressive taxation. Whether the peasant was rich or a poor, tax was same for both. Means this is regressive taxation. But India, we follow progressive taxation. Modern times because we have different slabs of taxes for different kinds of the people based on their income. ठीक? So we have a progressive taxation, but this taxation was very much regressive. Like indirect taxation is a regressive tax because that's same for Ambani as well as Garib like me. So that's regressive tax, but that's why we subsumed indirect taxes are regressive in nature, direct taxes are not regressive, rather they are progressive. Indirect are regressive. ठीक? And what can we see? Yes. Now, since new department of Diwan-e Mustakhraj was established, lot of revenue officials in the line, नए पोस्ट्स क्रिएट किए गए, आमील्स नए, ठीक है. अब उनको ताकि वो स्टेट के साथ कोई करप्शन ना करे, उनकी रजिस्ट्रेशन और उनका ऑडिट बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट हो गया. ठीक, मगर स्टिल वी हैव अ रेफरेंसेस वेयर दे करप्टेड और डिफाइड द रूल्स ऑफ नॉन करप्शन. तो मीन अब नए सोर्स ऑफ करप्शन पैदा हो गए. ठीक, तो ये इसके नेगेटिव पॉइंट्स थे. हमें if we have a policy, we have both silver lining as well as dark lining. तो ये इसकी dark lining थी, silver lining हमने पॉलिसी में देखी. These were his agrarian reforms. Now let's stop for a while, then we'll come to his other reforms. ठीक.